Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach. Leolam vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu. Melech hamayim v'natan lanu et Torah. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Blessed are you, Lord God, King of the universe, has given us the words of his Torah to perform. Blessed are you, Lord. Shalom and good evening, everyone. Welcome to this week's Shava, this week's Torah portion. We are in a very exciting Torah portion, so just got up your minds and let's study. Let's do a little in-depth understanding of everything. We are in Parasaht Shlach. Parasaht Shlach now is the time where all of them together have come to the edge of the desert and they're about to enter the land of Israel. But before they enter the land of Israel, they stop and they have all these wonderful questions. Should I go? Should I not go? What's it going to be like there? How are the people? How is the land? What is it going to be? A barren land? It's going to be all the unnecessary questions in life. When God says to go, you go. God is urging you from your inner compass to do something, you do it. But human nature is such. We don't trust. We don't have the confidence in our soul to do something for God. But just because we cannot see him with our physical eyes and we cannot hear him in a loud, audible voice, that inner voice that says, that impresses upon your heart, do this. That we do not trust. Oh, it's a wonderful time to actually understand the frailty of human nature, the fallenness of how we have corrupted our heart and our soul. And this is what this Torah portion is about. This Torah portion is about aligning ourselves correctly and understanding what's happening. So Parasaht Shlach, please turn with me if you all have your Torahs with you. If you all have your Bibles, the book of Bamidbar, Numbers, chapter 13, Yod Gimel, and we're going to read from there, and we're going to read comprehensively, not very comprehensively, but just snippets of the entire Torah portion because it's too much basically to run through. But I've picked a very, very important aspect of this portion. Okay, it's called Vzeh Priyah. Vzeh Priyah means, and this is her fruit. Okay, the word peri is fruit in Hebrew. We're going to study a little on that. We're going to go a little in depth to understand what Torah is talking about, in line with the Shlachim, with the 12 of them who went into the land, who were sent into the land. We're going to understand a little historical background as to what this is all about and the consequences of it. Now, this Torah portion starts with Moses taking out these 12 people, sending them to the land. They come back, they give a bad report. Once they give a bad report and God is angry, a plague breaks out, and that's dealt with. And then God says, you're not going into the land right now because you're not ready. So make some turnaround, goes back into the desert for another 40 years. And then we read about someone breaking the Shabbat and then he's stoned to death, right? And basically this is what Shlach is all about. Very interesting. Okay, turn with me. Chapter 13, Yud Gimel, and we're going to read. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe le'emor. These are the words that the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Shlach lecha anashim vayituru et Eretz Canaan asher ani noten livnei Israel. Ish echad lematei avotav tishlachu kol nasi bahem. The Lord spoke to Moses saying, send for yourself. Listen to the words very carefully. Send for yourself, because you don't trust anything that I say, God says. You don't have the confidence of that inner voice or the prophets that have been sent to you. So send for yourself. What's the background of this? The background of this is this. They've come to the land. They're about to enter it, but not in God's terms, on their own terms. So they come to Moses saying, Moses, let us scout the land. Let us see what this land has to offer. Maybe if it's good, we will stay. If it's not good, we'll return back to Egypt. The intentions are wrong in itself. You and me can be in the faith for 20 and 30, 40 years and yet be double-minded, yet have all the wrong intentions about entering into the rest and entering into the land. And I want to tell all those people who are double-minded, stop it right now. Listen to that voice and do it. Blessings will flow. If you don't, you're going to be answerable for this. You know what God is going to do? He's going to turn you around and throw you back into the wilderness. And you're going to cry. So they go to Moshe and say, Moshe, let's scout the land. Let's tour the land. Let's see what this is all about. God has brought us, that's fine. I mean, God told us to go there, it's fine. I want to see what it is all about. I just can't enter land somewhere and see new place, new opportunities. What are the opportunities? Am I going to be living out there? Is the parnasa good? Am I going to earn well? Am I going to look after my family? Am I going to be safe? Really? So many questions, right? We have in our mind. So they go to Moses. Moses thinks about it. He says, he agrees with them. And then he takes it to the Lord, before the Lord, and he talks to the Lord and he says, Lord, these are the grievances. How do I know this? Because in the book of Deuteronomy, God says, I never told you to scout the land. Moses tells them, you came to me and asked me that you wanted to scout the land. And I agreed with you. Therefore, I took this matter to the Lord, and the Lord says, go. Why does God say go? God says go because, this is the most wonderful thing about God. You can ask him all the right things and ask him for the right things, and he may not answer you because he wants you to depend upon that inner voice inside each one of you all, and you will do it. If you listen to him, you will do it. If your heart is filled with the Yetzer Hara, if it's filled with the evil inclination, God will say, do it. Do it. Like he told Bilam, you wanted to go. I told you first, don't go, don't go, don't go. Third time, you say, okay, now Bilam, go. Then you're listening to that inner evil of your own heart, your own counsel. What says go? God is not saying anything. But I have a feeling he tells Moses, listen. They came to you, they asked you this, let them go. But tell them about this and this and this. How is the land? Is it open spaces? Is it closed spaces? About the fruit of the land, about this. Ask them all these things and let them give a report back again. So Moses comes back to the people and he says, okay, go. He chooses them. And then he takes Hoshea ben Nun and he changes his name. Okay, and he gives them Yehoshua ben Nun. Why? Because there's a certain aspect out here. Hoshea ben Nun was not like Moshe Rabbeinu. Hoshea ben Nun affiliated himself with the people. He was a people's man. And Moshe knew this through divine inspiration, through divine Ruach HaKodesh. He knew that if he never interfered in the spiritual status of Yehoshua ben Nun at that point of time and changed his name and gave him that hay inside his name, there would have been a problem because Hoshea would have gone and he would have mingled with the 12, with the other 11 of them, okay, and he would have voiced their concerns because, according to the people, Hoshea or Yehoshua, if you want to take his name, was familiar with the people, not Moses. Moses stood out. In the sight of the people, they understood Hoshea better, but not Moses. Because Moses belonged to Sinai. Moses belonged to God on top. Moses was, his face was radiant. He was half divine and he was half human. What have we got to do with Moses? He's not human. He belongs to God. He doesn't belong to us. But Hoshea belongs to us. So we can work on Hoshea. We can manipulate Hoshea. So Moses calls him Hoshea, come. Changes his name. Says, now go. And that was brilliant on the part of Moses, because I have a feeling God already instructed him, told him, this is the nonsense these people are going to do, and this is the evil they have created within their hearts. Let them do it. So then he calls them out and he says, okay, sends them into land. He gives them a lot of instructions, right? And this is contrary to what we understand and what we normally read in the Bible. So I'm just giving you a background of that. Now, when they come back, they bring a report. It's called an evil report. Okay, an evil report. But actually, if you go to look at it, what they brought back as a report was visible truth. They said there were giants there and there were giants in the land. The cities are fortified, and yes, the cities are fortified. Whole lot of things they spoke was true. So where was the falseness in what they spoken? No, because Moses told them what to look for. And that's what they looked for, and they brought back the report. And when they came back, they came straight to Moses and to Aaron, and they gave the full report. When you read that report, it's very accurate. Perfect. And Moses heard them out, said, yes. But what happened after that was the problem. Now, there were two things basically which I want to talk to you all about these two problems. And these two problems are very, very specific in understanding why this created a big issue. One is, they say that the land is a land that swallows up its inhabitants. Keep this in mind. It's very, very important that this land gobbles up the people who live in it. And that didn't go very well with the eternal God. Never went, because the land of Israel is God's. We are so used to looking at the Jewish people. We are so used to looking at this. But the important place is the land. God said, the land is mine. You don't talk evil about the land. It's not the land that swallows up the people. It's the people that transgress one another. Because when they come into the land of Israel, it's flourishing, it's plenty, it's full. It's the people who bring the transgression into the land, and they start a cycle of violence, Hamas, transgression, and sin, and they're destroying each other. And the land does not support them. Now, in previous sessions, I've taught each one of you all that the word land, Eretz Israel. Why is it called Eretz Israel? The word Eretz comes from the land, from the word ratz, to run. And run is the same word, ratzon, which means will. So the land of Israel itself is called Eretz Israel because it is the closest thing on this earth to God, because it belongs to the Lord of all the earth. This is his place. He's not interested in what grows in Australia. He's not interested in what grows in America. He's interested in what happens to the land of Israel. This is his place. He says, you all can take the nations and live in it. I want to inhabit the land of Israel. This is my place, and you would keep it holy. All the other Amalekites and the Jebusites and the Girgashites and Hittites and all these people were not supposed to be in the land because they were transgressing each other. So when the 12 tribes, the 12 of these spies go inside and they come out with this concept that the land is, it's an evil place and it's devouring its inhabitants, God says, no, this is, I will not accept this. Point number one. Point number two, that after they briefed Moshe and Aaron, after they done this, they all went into their tents and they sat with their friends and their comrades in the evening and they discussed about the land. And they said about the giants and about this and about that, and a whole lot of evil report. And that rivaled up the people, and the people started getting fear, and there was tremendous trepidation and fear, and all these things happened. And then suddenly there was a huge hue and cry in the camp. Oh, we are going into destruction. See what has happened. And that is what the problem was. So, two things. Keep this in mind. One is check your intentions, even though you think you are doing right in the sight of God. Check your intentions. It's very, very important. Two is, for heaven's sake, don't instigate and rival people. Don't do that. God doesn't like it. When Miriam took her brother to talk against Moses, God immediately took action. He said, you will not do this. Never instigate. And I'm telling you, friends, we see this all over the place. In congregations, churches, in places, people are this camp and that camp and North Indian camp and South Indian camp and this camp. Oh God, it's a mess, you know. And we're constantly, everybody's instigating and talking about this one and talking about that one. We have to be very careful of this. So two things. One is, don't talk bad about the land of Israel. It is God's garden. That's his place. Understand, it's very, very important. It's all got to do with the land. Two is, check your intentions and do not instigate. It's very, very bad. This was the major issue that happened. Okay, so they came back, they instigated, and you know what the story is all about, right? And 12 of them now, we took out 12 of these people. Each of them have a certain role to play in this entire story. Because if you look at the names of each one of them, they say a person's name is a reflection of his character, of what he is, and how he actually lives his life on this earth, his midot, his attributes. Okay, so it gives a list of all these 12 of them. I got a couple of them, not many of them, but 7, 8. I want to talk a little about that before I go on to basically what the topic of this evening. This is just introduction. Okay, so the first of them was, there are 12 names. I've just written them down and just talk to you all. Names of the 12 individuals mentioned that were tasked into this group to go as scouts, and each name has a specific cause attached to it because of the midot of that person. What is midot? Midot is the attributes of that person, who he is from inside. And if you look at it, it fits into this big picture as to what's happening. Okay, and the end result, whether it's good or bad or whatever it's going to be. And we look now, the first name is, and by the way, these names that are in the Torah, it's not written in the order of birth, which normally that's how the Torah operates, right? From eldest to the youngest. Neither is it written in the order of the flags as they marched in the desert. It's just random, which tells you also a lot. Okay, the first name is Shammua, son of Zakur. Shammua from the word Shema. He never listened to that inner voice. He was a person who never listened to that inner voice. to that divine inspiration, never listened to it. Therefore, everything that he done, his motivation was rebellious. The second is Shaphat, son of Hori. Shaphat from the word shafa, to decree, to say, to judge. He was a person who gave strong opinions. And he said, this is it means this is bad is this is bad. It says he never sat down and he never reflected and he never took into consideration from where his motivation in life is all about. You see the inefficiencies in these people's spirit, all of them. And the names are reflecting all of this 12. So when it says he never judged his inclinations, in other words, he was not a person who would sit down and spend time in reflection as to what am I going to pray to God about. Tefillah prayers about. What is tefillah? You know, we've done it so many times that before you even open your mouth to say a word before the eternal, you got to reflect on your state of mind, on the state of your heart first. And when you've collected your thoughts and your thoughts are in the right place, then you open your mouth and speak. Don't speak incoherently to God. It's a no. Know before whom you stand. And if you don't judge yourself, because the word tefillah, prayer, comes from the word palel, hith palel. Hith palel basically means to self-assess your situation. And when you self-assess your situation, then you pray. So you're judging yourself. And when God sees, okay, you're assessing yourself, you're judging yourself, you're bringing yourself, you will have humility and you'll say, God, I'm in a problem. I need a solution to this. We ask God for all the solutions in the world, but we don't want to deal with ourselves. Shafat, he never shafa. He never gave a decree. He never self-assessed himself. Therefore, all that he assessed of the land was wrong. We're talking about the middot here, the attributes of a person. Okay. Yigal, son of Yosef. Okay. The word Yigal means, in other words, means to reveal, allude to something, to reveal, uh, and it's got to do with evil speech. Okay. And impetuous in nature, basically. So he was revealing things and saying things out of time before anybody. He wanted to be in the front, impetuous, not listening to anybody, not taking instructions, just being impetuous. Very wrong attitude. So everything that he done as his deeds was all out of sync, out of tune, out of time, and uh, there was more chaos in his life than symmetry. I hope you're like getting to where I'm bringing about the middot, how how we should need to reflect on ourselves with all of this. Okay, Gadiel, son of Sodi, he says the word Gadi, Giddim, comes from the word Giddim, which is very accusative. The word Giddim is very accusative. It's a person who would constantly accuse, never take responsibility for his own actions or his own words. But you are at fault. Therefore, he always brought up grief. He dwelled and he on situations that were negative, and he blamed everybody else for his life. And he was the one who said, basically, according to the sages, he was the one who said, it is the land that consumes its inhabitants. Numbers 13, verse 32. He was the guy who said this. Amiel, son of Gemali. He was the one who basically gave up hope. He said, since these people are stronger than us, and he gave up hope and he lost strength, and he was the one who brought in the spirit of fear in everybody. You see how, even if you are going to do God's work, you have to be very, very sensitive and in tune with God's divine inspiration. Immediately you will know a person. Immediately you will know what that person's processing. Immediately you will know a mind that is double-minded. Immediately you will know a person that is operating because he's listening to the evil inclination rather than God's word. You see, when you study Torah for so long, you get used to it. At least I'm very, very used to it right now. Very used to it. Okay. Setur, son of Michael. He had a heart that always contradicts itself. You're the double-mindedness. You would say something else and do something else. You would aspire for something else and land up doing something else. Reach nothing else in life. You will achieve nothing in life. Nakbi, son of Wafsi. The word Hafbi means to hide, to literally hide something. He hid truth and he refrained to speak faith from his mouth. Therefore, all the words that came out from his mouth, he said, I am not, this is a political mind. I am not going to say yes, I'm not going to say no. Whatever is the status quo, let others decide. I'm going to sit out in the background and I will go with the flow. You know what? God hates this person the most. Be very careful of this political mind. These are some of them. Then we know about Caleb and we know about Yehoshua. They're the ones, and Yehoshua was the one who was not like Caleb. Caleb was the strong-headed one. He was the best out of the lot, actually. And God made with him a covenant of peace, right? Eternal covenant of peace, because Caleb showed what it is to have the true midot and strength of character. We have to depend, God looks at us as to who you are as a person, not what you can become. Listen to what I'm saying. God is dealing with you. He wants you to be the best of you, not what you can become. We've got all our heads in the air, friends. Come down. I keep pulling everybody on. Come down to earth. Everybody's head is in the air. Just be the best of yourself. God appreciates that. That was Caleb, because he was true to himself. He's seen sin and he's seen evil, and he's seen what was happening. He took the spear and he speared those guys. He killed them, both the man and the woman. That's it. And God never punished him. God said, you may give him an eternal covenant of peace. Tremendous. But it was Yehoshua that was the in-between one. So Moses had to strengthen him. And he changed his name and he infused into Yehoshua, that spiritual aspect, that impartation. And now Yehoshua spoke. Therefore, Caleb and Yehoshua were the only two ones who entered into the land. Moses done a favor to Yehoshua here. Okay, so since you got to this background, why am I telling you all of this? Because all of this has got to do with midot. Your midot, your attributes are unrectified and wrong in a person. Your fruit will be wrong. The fruit of your life will be wrong. That is where we need to rectify ourselves. I am fed up. I'm saying this, I'm fed up with all of us, that we profess faith, we profess following Yeshua, we profess a faith, but when it comes to a midot, We are completely unrectified. At a spur of the moment, we can get angry with somebody. The spur of the moment, we do not reconcile or think out something very clearly because we are filled with anger, jealousy, and covetousness. You know how big this is among your fraternity? This is big. You don't even know it. Violence, cheating. It's rampant, friends. If you and me profess faith in Yeshua, we have to learn to deal with our middot. Because our middot that's coming from the animal soul inside of us can be grossly evil. Now, what happens to an evil people that is not able to rectify their middot? Who is allowing the evil Yetzirah, the evil inclination, to dominate their lives? They're coming to the edge of the land, and now they're displaying the evil middot. God says, "Mhm, don't enter into the land. Turn around. Go back." This is exactly what's happening in the story. Why? Because God is protecting the land. And I'm saying this again. I've heard many people over the years say, the place that I stand on is holy ground. I don't need to be the land of Israel. They talk such foolishness. It's foolish talk all the time. They don't know how important the land of Israel is. Even till today, it's not living up to the land of Israel is rampant with impurity. Even till today. When the land of Israel will walk in purity, in tahor of what God intends it to be, you and me will be aghast what that land is capable of about. I'm saying this all over again. Till God refurbishes that land and brings back Garden of Eden back to the land of Israel where it was in the first place. It's all about that. And he brought in the Jewish people to look after the land and to do the things that he had asked Adam and Chava to do in the first place. They failed, threw them out, and now he is preparing a people to do that same thing because the land of Israel is his. He wants a priesthood to look after the land of Israel on an earthly level. That is all God is doing, nothing else. So they're displaying fruit of what? Of evil. Now, it's not specific only to the Jewish people. At this point of time, all of humanity is evil. All of humanity is evil. What was God trying to do to them? He was trying to make them understand that when you're going to enter into the land, you have to have a rectified middot. You have to be in a place of rectification, or at least in the process of rectification. And if you see from the story, none of them enter the land except for Caleb and Yehoshua. And by the way, even in the book of Deuteronomy, Moses is tired, he's exhausted, he cannot take this anymore. He's slipping up, he's messing up. His relationship with God is not very good. So God says, Moses, hang your boots up. That's it. Look at the land, be happy, you're not entering into the land. No, you're not. Moses pleads with him, he says, no, you're not entering into the land. I'm sorry. Sorry. And there are reasons which I won't get into it right now. There are other reasons also why they went to them. Okay, so it comes down to the human being and it comes down to the fruit of a human being. In chapter 13, verse 27, let's read this. Let's read verse 27 and let's try and understand what's happening out here. Because when I was studying this, I was asking the Lord, give me some little more revelation on what this is all about. And the word that's used out here is superfluous. I mean, it should not be there because contextually, it should be using a different formation of the Hebrew word of peri. of fruit, right? It should be using the word perot, the fruits of the land, or some other word that's got to do with all the verb tenses of the Hebrew. But it uses a different word. It uses the word Priyah, which really baffled me when I was studying this word. So why does the Torah use this word Priyah? Okay, let's read this. 27. Ah. Vayisparu lo vayamru be'anu el haaretz asher shelachtenu vegam zavat chalav udavash hu Vzeh Priyah. And they reported back to him and said, we arrived at the land to which you sent us, and indeed it flows with milk and honey, and this is her fruit. This is the fruit of the land. This is what the land is giving. It's her fruit. It does not say that these are the fruit of the land. It's telling you this is what the land is growing, and this is the grape, and this is the pomegranate, and this is. It's not saying that. It says, and behold, this is her fruit. I hope you're understanding the difference. This is her fruit. And what are the three fruits that are mentioned over there? Let's see. And then, but people, and then he said, but the people that dwell in the land is powerful, and the cities are very fortified and large. And we also saw there the offspring of the giant, the Anak, and the Amalek dwells in the land. In the south, the Hittite, the Yevusi, the Amori, and the Canaanite dwell by the sea next to the Yarden. Then Caleb, he said, shh, 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 shh. Hush them. He said, careful, stop all this. And then he said, we shall surely ascend and conquer it, for we can surely do it. Now, Caleb also is saying something that you'll need to understand. What was the intention of God entering the land? Did God fortify themselves to fight the people in the land, or God had given them a different fight? Now, I want to be very clear here that when God fortified them spiritually, He said, you will enter into the land and you will take over the land by understanding what the land is all about, and that you become one with the land, and that you understand what you're supposed to do in the land, because the land is reporting to me. God says the land is wanting to do my will. Therefore, you will not suffocate the land. You will do what the land also needs to do, so you can live properly in the land, and the land will respond to you accordingly, and you'll be able to live in that. If you suffocate the land, you're going to be in trouble. Keep the Shabbat of the land. Okay. Caleb is saying that we can surely go and we can surely conquer it. Now, this is a midot of Caleb, that out of all the negative midot, I think this is a midot that God really gets, the Eternal really gets, little excited with. I don't know why, because whenever you see somebody who's aggressive, God takes cognizance of that person. He takes cognizance and he says, okay, I need to use this person. And God is very strategic, right? He sees Paul, Rav Shaul in the New Testament going around imprisoning, killing, slaughtering all the people of the way. And one second, I need people like this. I need people like this. So Caleb has got this thing in mind that I am fortified. I've got the spear and I've got the sword with me. Let there be giants in the land. We will still conquer it. This is not God's intention. Nevertheless, he gives, and you see what he does later, right? He goes and kills those two. But nevertheless, he quietens the people. He says, don't be discouraged. We can. But the men who, then it says, but the men who have ascended with him said, we cannot ascend to that people, for it is stronger than us. And there were people of tremendous measures. And then all of them, towards the end, uh, they all started wailing and weeping and crying, and they said to one another, "Let us appoint a leader, let us return back to Egypt." They were discouraged, and the people, these 12, created havoc in the camp. Now we're trying to understand, and we're getting a basic understanding of what's happening in the story, right? Okay, what are the three fruits that they talk about here? That's what I want to basically show. Hmm. They arrived at the valley of Escol and cut from them a vine with one cluster of grapes, and they carried it on a pole by two, and of the pomegranates and of the figs. They mentioned three of the fruits. What are the seven fruits of the land of Israel? The seven fruits of the land of Israel are the wheat, the barley, the grape, the fig, the pomegranate, the date, the olive. The seven fruits of Israel. And each of the seven fruit of Israel have a spiritual connection to the land. So what do I mean by this? Now, this is where I'm going to take you a little deep into the Torah to make you understand that each of these fruit, are an expression of a spiritual condition of how the land wants to express itself to God. And not only the land, but all these seven spiritual connections of these fruit have also got to do with the middot of a human being. That means every human being also displays these seven fruits. For example, the Kohen Hagadol, when he wore his bigdei kehuna and he wore his garment, at the end of the garment, around below every alternate place, there were bells like pomegranates are there, right? The bells like pomegranates around. It meant something. The grape, the wine, it has a spiritual meaning. The figs has a spiritual meaning. The olive have a spiritual meaning. The date has a spiritual meaning. The wheat, we read extensively, we've studied extensively about the wheat. You'll know the entire Pesach, I've done the teaching about the wheat and the barley. So the wheat and the barley is something else. The wine is about something else. Uh, the fig is about something else. Oh, it's tremendous power in the fruit of the land. And this is what God is trying to tell them. When they gave the Bikurim, and when they were giving the fruit as Bikurim, as an offering, as a first fruit offering to the Lord, they were not just giving fruit of the land, it was a statement for each one of them that I understand each fruit, the spiritual meaning of each fruit, how it applies to my life, and how I have dealt with the negative Yetzer Hara inside of me, and I've converted it into the positive mitzvot, and therefore I have overcome. And this is my fruit. The word peri, which is fruit, is also can be termed as peri, my fruit. This is my fruit. So giving fruit as an offering in Bikurim, right, first fruits, it's not that because you just take the fruit from the land and take and give it to God and say, okay, Lord, I need to give it to you. It's senseless. It reminds me in our churches, I don't know about the other churches, at least the couple of congregations I go to. Every year, sometime around November, December, they have this thing called the Harvest Festival, right? And I don't know why they do it in the first place. It's senseless. What do they end up doing at the Harvest Festival? Having fun, some games, food, and then they have an auction and raise money and God knows what. It's got nothing to do with all of this, friends. Listen to what I'm saying. If you take an apple, a tapuak in your hand and you offer it to God, you're saying, this fruit is a result of me being rectified before you, Heavenly Father. That is what they were supposed to do. So here they come in and they bring three fruit. They bring the vine that was so huge. Two people had to carry it at the back and two people had to carry it in the front. It was just hanging down. Tremendous. And they came, they carried it practically for 40 days, and they came and they said, "This is a fruit. Look at it. The cluster of it is beautiful." And they brought the pomegranates and the figs. Three, what do these basically? You see, the Torah is very, very specific. It's not random. In every dot and tittle and in every word, the Torah is speaking to you. It's not that the Torah just is giving us a historical background in everything. If you say in the book of Galatians in 5:22, God's Rav Shaul writes that you need to operate. Oh, let me quote it. It says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law, there is no Torah. And they that have Christ have crucified the flesh with the affections and the lusts. Therefore, you can bring out the fruit." I am now understanding what I'm trying to bring to the point, that when they came into the land and they were about to enter it, they were not rectified. So God had to take them and throw them back into the wilderness for 40 years. And he said, for every day that you spent touring the land, those 40 days, I will punish you with 1 year. So 1 day to 1 year, 40 days to 40 years, they were out in the wilderness. And to rectify those 40 years, to contract the time of the rectification of those 40 years, Yeshua went into the wilderness of Yehuda in Judea, and for 40 days he was fasting to rectify the whole of Israel. Because that is who he came for, the children of Israel. Because he was ready to enter into the rest. He had the proper middot before the Father. And what they could not do 1500 years before, he done it. So when you're reading Galatians 5:22, understand the context. We tend to say, okay, New Testament is different from the Old Testament. No, nothing is different. What has happened is that the New Testament now, we've been empowered to live by the Spirit, by how Yeshua has given us that opportunity now to live better. First for the Jewish people, then for the Gentiles. But we coming from the Gentiles are reading this and creating our own theology out of this. I'm sorry, I don't stand for it, my friends. Absolutely don't stand for it. So Galatians says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. He says the result of crucifying your flesh is this. This is exactly what they were supposed to do just before entering into the land. So it says, okay, well, let's read. Vayavo ad Nahal Eshkol. We cross the rivulet. Nahal is rivulet of Eshkol. Vaykartu Mesham Zemora. Vayeshkol Anavim Echad. Vayishehu Bamot Beshanim Umin Harumenim Umin Ha-Tehanim. And they brought in the pomegranates and the figs. Now, what does pomegranate stand for? What does the fig stand for? What does the wine stand for? Let's look at it from classic, authentic Jewish thought and Jewish mind. Because if we don't touch that, everything that we do in relation to that or in severance of that, we're going to be in trouble. Let's read. I've just marked it down so we'll be able to study it. So the sages and the great Kabbalists of the Torah say that there is a much deeper significance to these fruits. Each correspond to one of the seven Sphirot, divine emotive attributes of the human soul. Now, those who are doing Adam Kadmon, the course that we're doing right now, should get this immediately because we've come a long way in that course. Many of us are doing that course. This will reflect, and now you will understand rectification. Tikkun ha nefesh and tikkun ha olam. That there is a much deeper significance to these fruits. Each corresponds to one of the seven sphirot, or the divine emotive attributes of the human soul. For every soul possesses all seven of these midot. Each person has varying degrees of them, some in dominance and some in subjection. So some people are emotional and they're full of kindness, and they don't know how much kindness to give and how much not to give, so they fall into trouble, right? It reminds me of a person. Some people have might and they don't realize how much of might they have in their personality, and they overdo it and they neglect everything else. Okay? Some, all the different attributes of a person. The balance of all of this is when a person is rectified to that level, the balance of all of this brings a harmony, it brings a tiferet, a beauty. And this takes tremendous amount of training, subjugation, and understanding self-assessment of yourself as to what am I doing? Why am I saying this? What am I doing this? What are my intentions? What is my kavanah? Why should I be doing all this? Once I know how to assess myself, then I know who I am, and therefore I can present myself and I can rectify myself. And this is what God wants you to do. He doesn't want you to come in a place and be foolish and just talk rubbish in front of him and go, like what we used to. Because the divine spark and the divine soul in all of you is the rational soul. You got to think. One has to think. And these seven correspond to the seven levels of the human soul. Now, if I look at the Sphirot, there are 10. So we're doing the course, you all should know. There's 10. 7 in the Parzuf, right? Parzuf, the emotive level, the physicality, Yusod, foundation level, and the cognitive level, the emotive level, and the biological level. The Parzuf of cognitive level is got to do with Chokmah, Bina, and Da'at, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. The emotive level, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, right, to some extent. And the foundation level, Yisod, Hod, Netzach, and Yisod. And Malkut is kingdom, where God says, I will inhabit this place and I will rule as king here. But for God to rule as king there, and you say, Lord, please come into the midst of me and set up your throne and you rule from there. I have to take all these 7 midot and rectify it. If I'm struggling in the cognitive level of Chokmah, Bina, and Da'at, how am I going to rectify the rest of my emotive and my foundation level? How is God going to be king in Malkut, in my life? So we're reading the story of them entering into the land. We're reading the story of them being turned around, spurned away, and go back into the desert. And we're saying, oh, but we're not catching the basic, what the Torah is telling us about rectification and the fruit. Now the fruit, why is the land giving this fruit? Why does the Torah say, Vzeh, Priyah? This is her fruit. Because it's feminine out there. The hay in the end gives you Priyah. The hay is a feminine consonant. Vzeh Priyah. This is her fruit. So they, in other words, they were bringing, but they don't know what they were bringing. They just brought the fruit over there. But when Moshe is writing the Torah down, he's writing and saying, this is a fruit. That means he's giving us a window into what the land has to offer. That if you enter into this land, one, you have to be rectified. If you're not rectified, you have to be in the process of being rectification. The power of the land of Israel is to rectify your soul. The power of the Torah is to rectify your soul. You will struggle if you're still living in the flesh and you're not allowing yourself to rectify. And I perceive that everyone today, even who professes the faith, are still struggling with the same thing in the same way, in a different contextual time and era that we're living in. You want to know what's happening with all the tuma and impurity the world over, with the congregations world over? This is the problem. Everyone professes with the mouth. Everyone is a good believer, a good Christian, or whatever you want to call it. Everybody professes the name. Everyone goes to congregations or church every Sunday, partakes of God's table, the Lord's table, but there is no rectification of your midot. It's not happening. The first of these fruit, I'm going to take a little more time, everybody, today. The first of this fruit is the grain called wheat. Now we've studied extensively about wheat. The land is giving the wheat. Why is the land giving the wheat? In abundance and flourishing. Because wheat, when we study the Pesach, we've done it extensively. I hope I'm not going to be able to repeat that today. But the wheat resembles the human soul. The wheat that is dehydrated, crushed, broken, made into flour, offered at a flour level. That I'm finished. Lord, I'm humbled. Then made into a matzah bread without any water, without any life, without any anointing. Then matzah bread with little oil. That's a different offering. And then matzah bread griddled with oil. That's a higher anointing. And at Pesach, what do they give as the first sheaf offering? They give the barley, because that is the barley is animal feed, it's not human feed. So you're dealing with the animal self inside of you. And then you count the Sefirat Omer 50 days from there. And you're preparing. The problem that in our congregations and churches, that we are so used to having a one Good Friday and then 2 days resurrection of the Lord, and we have forgotten everything. But that's not what the Torah says. That you will count 50 days from the day next of Pesach. And 50 days, we've done this in the other lesson, in combinations of 49 steps, that you will count each day in the rectification of your soul till you reach the 50th day, that is Shavuot, or what we will colloquially call Pentecost. And at Pentecost, you will not give barley. You will give 2 loaves of wheat bread, leavened bread, fit for the human being. That is a type of soul. The land will enable you to rectify your soul. That's why it says this is the fruit. This is her fruit. That's the barley and the wheat. And the wheat talks about chesed, it talks about kindness of God in our lives. Because the human soul needs to be elevated. The barley talks about gevurah, the might, the severity. And the animal soul needs to be overcome. It needs to be put to the test and has to be subjugated and brought under control. The figs, now I'm correlating this to the sferot. Chesed, wheat, gevurah, barley. The figs, netzach, perseverance, overcoming. Why? Figs. Because the fig tree is got to do with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. When Adam and Hawa sinned, they covered themselves with fig leaves. They were ashamed. They prematurely ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil when they were not supposed to do it at that point of time. If they had matured enough, and after a period of time, God would have said, this fruit for a later time. God will say, now partake of it. But in immaturity, they ate, they fell into trouble. The pomegranate, Hod, praise, and thanksgiving. Do you know a pomegranate? Why it's an important fruit in the land of Israel? Because a pomegranate, roughly, I'm not saying it's exact, but this is the wisdom that is around among the sages right from the days of the Zugot till now, that the seeds or the pods in the pomegranate roughly equal to 613. It may not be exact. I don't think it's going to be exact, but maybe it's just a cultural thing. But the 613 directly refer to the 613 mitzvot. So the pomegranate that the Kohen Hagadol keeps on his garment, the me'il, down, that signifies that he's wearing the Bigdei Kehuna that is in perfection of all the 613 commandments that he's walking in. Tremendous. The olives, it signifies struggle and crushing and extracting of oil, anointing. This is from where we get the olive oil to light the menorah and the lamps. Dates, tamar, dates. Whenever you read honey in the Bible, it's not the bee honey. Please get it out of your system. Whenever you read about honey, davash, it's not bee honey. It's honey that comes from dates. So even now, if you go to many, if you have Shabbat with a lot of Jewish people, they will not have wine. They will have uh, date date juice, which is called honey. The honey that comes from dates is called honey in Israel. Until the bees came and bees were brought, and what all happened, and uh, honey was extracted. But true honey, davash, is date honey in Israel. And date signifies, the tree of the date signifies Malkut kingdom, Tamar. And kingdom now has to be brought into shalom and peace and rectification. And kingdom is the physicality, the world of Asiyah that we live in. So it is this world that is constantly in turmoil and it needs rectification. So this world, the date, the kingdom aspect talks about peace and shalom and peace and wholeness and completeness. But we forgot another very, very important one of them, the wine. The wine, the wine. That resembles that part of Sphirot called Tiferet, beauty, whole and complete person, right? That brings a beauty inside of you. You may be physically the most ugliest person, but when you're walking in that beauty, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And that's joy, simcha, gili, sason, right? We've done all this before. And revelation. And the most important aspect of wine, of the wine, of the grape, is that it has the power for Kedusha. That is why every Shabbat meal, every Chag, everything, you sanctify the occasion with wine because it separates, it sanctifies something from the normal to something that's holy. Therefore, you all must be thinking, why do the Jewish people have wine in Shabbat? Why do they drink wine? They drink wine and break bread every Shabbat. Because that bread that's broken is the bread that this is my bread that I have breaking. We've got it all wrong. The wine sanctifies the day. It sanctifies the moment. It sanctifies the people that partake of it and gives you joy because wine opens the heart out. A person speaks truth and revelation. That's why Yeshua said, I am the true wine. If you're connected to me, all beauty and all completion and everything will come into play in your life. Absolutely beautiful. Tremendous. Tremendous power in all that we're learning here, friends. Tremendous power. If only we have years to understand what the Torah is, the part of the Torah. Now, when you read New Testament, you'll be okay. Now I understand what the New Testament is saying, because the New Testament is a midrash. It's pale in context. It is so heavily contextually engrafted into the Old Testament that you will never understand the New Testament if you don't know your Old Testament. Never understand it. So now we are talking about her fruit, the fruit of the land, right? That is connected to the tree of life. And so you and me also, God says, He threw Adam and Chava out and said, out, let them throw them out from the Garden Eden. Otherwise, they will stretch forth their hand and also partake of the tree of life. Because if I'm connected to the tree of life, my fruit will be equivalently good. There are 7 instances in the Torah or in the Tanakh where the tree of life is mentioned. 7 of them. 3 in the book of Genesis and 4 in the book of Mishle of Proverbs. And if you look very carefully at these verses, you will understand there's a slight difference in all of them. Slight difference. By the way, I've got this thing which I've made. I'll probably share it with all of you all, so you all can run through the notes. In the first time it talks about tree of life, it talks in Genesis 2 verse 9, which talks about and that God planted this garden, and in the middle of the garden there was this in the center of the garden was the tree of good and evil and also the tree of life. Talks about that. The second time it talks about the tree of life, that they would stretch forth their hand and partake of it, and also, and the third time says, and God guarded the tree of life so they would not enter into that. And then 4 times after that. Now this is what's happening out here. The 7 of them, right? But the tree of life is still the Chokmah, Bina, and wisdom. It's there. And then the 7 emotional attributes and the physical attributes of foundation are connected to all of this. It's like, the 7 fruit. In the 7 instances. One more instance that's mentioned, and it's mentioned, I think, in the New Testament, which is the 8th in the book of Revelation, where Yeshua says, he who overcomes will I give to eat of the tree of life. Okay. There must be more in the New Testament. I'm not too sure, but I think there are 8. If I'm not too, if I may be wrong. Uh, so in Genesis 2 verse 9, Genesis 3 verse 22, Genesis 3 verse 24, Proverbs 3 verse 18, Proverbs 13 verse 12, Proverbs 15 verse 4. But there's a difference between the book of Proverbs and the book of Genesis. But the book of Genesis talks about Etz Ha-Chaim, the tree of life, the only tree of life. But in the book of Proverbs, it talks about Etz Chaim, tree of life. Tree timed all of that. It's running short because I have to start something at 8:30, friends. Please read these verses down, write it down. Okay, Genesis 2:9, Genesis 3:22, Genesis 3:24, Proverbs Mishle 3:18, Proverbs 11:30, Proverbs 13 verse 12, and Proverbs 15 verse 4. Go home tonight, study these verses, and you will understand the difference between Etz Chaim and Etz Ha-Chaim, because there's only one tree of life in the book of Genesis. And what's written in the Proverbs is just tree of life. Okay, it's a different thing altogether. And I'm going to leave you all with this understanding difference. There's no time to sit and explain all of that. We are running out of time. I'm going to leave you all with this one thing. And I keep saying this all the time. You have to be resolute in what you are thinking, what you're processing. And you have to be resolute. If you're stingy in your mind, you'll be stingy in your habits. If you're stingy in your habits, you'll be stingy with everything around you. Don't try and protect what you think you have. It's not yours. It's not yours. If you're not listening to that inner voice, you're in for serious trouble. Because 99% of the time, God uses our intuition to talk to us. But how do I know it's not my intuition only and it's God's divine will inside of us? Because when I do it, I sense a joy, and that is an accomplishment, and there's a positive thing that happens. And then you see the fruit of what happens. Yeah, God wanted me to do this. 99% of the time, God speaks like this. 1% of the time, maybe God will speak to you. Now, if that's the case with those who are close to Him, what about the people who are unrectified? Nothing. Absolutely nothing, friends. So be tuned to this. And I'll leave you all with all of this. Don't think by reading the Torah, we're just reading about a history of people who are trying to come into the land, and they sinned with God, and they were bad, and they were thrown. It's got nothing to do with that. It's about God enabling us to rectify ourselves. This is what we need to come out with today, friends. So God bless all of you all. Have a wonderful Shabbat. May you all have a wonderful meal with your families. I urge you all, have a wonderful meal with your families today. Celebrate it and know that we are in this process of rectification. Until I meet you tomorrow morning for Shabbat praise, God bless and shalom to all of you.
So